As the calendar turns into April, there are always some changes. Let's take a look at April weather, and we are actually seeing quite a bit. That doesn't mean winter has finished at all. It's not uncommon at all in the northern plains, upper Midwest to get an April snowfall, but it's usually very short-lived once you get this late into the season. What we're looking at is surges of warm air coming north, especially out in the Great High Plains. There will be some very warm days, and a concern again this spring will be areas where it's not dry enough for planting. This is the National Soil Moisture Network looking at topsoil. This is actually looking at about the top foot or so of topsoil, and it's a percentile. So when you see the blue shaded areas like southeast Iowa, much of the southern corn belt down here, it's very wet, like in the 98th or 99th percentile of moisture. Most of the Great Corn Belt is quite wet right now. Until you get up into northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, southeastern Minnesota, things are a little closer to average soil moisture. And let's kind of focus here on the Dakotas and Minnesota. Southern Minnesota, fairly optimum, a little bit wet in areas of northern Minnesota, and there continues to be this area where it's very wet, southern North Dakota and northern South Dakota, but there are some dry pockets actually showing up in northeast North Dakota where it was not nearly as snowy of a winter season. The weather pattern as we go through the next couple of weeks, still looking at split flow jet, but with the Arctic air so far north, we are starting to see milder temperatures up into the Midwest and northern plains, and you note periodically little what we call in meteorology tongues of warm air drifting north all the way up into parts of North Dakota. And by warm air, I'm meaning getting up close to or into the 70s. And we will continue to see surges of that. The really cold weather will stay north. Most of the south remains quite warm. As we move into the weekend, I am expecting a bit of a northern plains cool down, and that will be manifested, but also fairly short-lived, because as we look into the April 5th through 11th period, I am expecting a nice surge again of warm air to come northward into the northern plains, mostly the western parts. Precipitation-wise, this week, March 29th through April 4th, it'll be wet across the south. Most of this getting up into the Midwest and plains is not going to be excessive moisture, just a little bit showery. And there will be some moisture in the Pacific Northwest, some lingering mountain snows. I don't expect to see a lot of particularly heavy rain anywhere. And as we go to the second week, April 5th through 11th, just some showers in the south. Not saying it won't rain at all in the great Midwest and northern plains, but it is looking like the weather will go into a somewhat drier and also milder period, hopefully paving the way for some better planting weather.